No, I do not want to see your head come off.
That's good. That's good.
Hi guys, it's your Truly's Chase here, and we are going to be going over the Creepypasta Abandoned by Disney. And let's get started with that. Some of you may have heard that Disney Corporation is responsible for at least one real live ghost town. Disney built the Treasure Island resort in Baker's Bay in the Bahamas. It didn't start as a ghost town. Disney's cruise ships would actually stop at the resort and leave tourists there to relax in luxury. This is a fact. Look it up. Disney blew $30 million on this place. Yes, $30 million. Then they abandoned it. Disney blamed the shallow waters, too shallow for the ships to safely operate. And there was even blame cast on the workers, saying that since they were at the Bahamas, they were too lazy to work a regular schedule. That's where the factual nature of the story ends. It became sand, and it obviously wasn't because foreigners are lazy. Both are convenient excuses. No, I sincerely doubt those reasons are legitimate. Why don't I buy the official story? Because on Margot's Palace, near the beachside of City of Emerald Isle, in the North Carolina, Disney began construction of Margot's Palace in the late 1990s. The concept was a jungle-themed resort with a large, you guessed it, palace in the center of the whole thing. If you're unfamiliar with the character Mowgli, then you might better remember the story The Jungle Book. If you haven't seen it anywhere else, you know it. It was a Disney cartoon from decades past. Mowgli is an abandoned child in the jungle, essentially raised by animals and continuously threatened and pursued by other animals. Mowgli's palace was controversial undertaking from the start. Disney bought up a ton of high-priced land for the project, and there was actually a scandal surrounding some of the purchases. The local government claimed eminent domain on people's homes, then turned around and sold properties of Disney. At one point, a home that had just been constructed immediately condemned with little time to no explanation. The land grabbed by the government was supposedly, for some fictional highway project, knowing full well that was going on. People started calling it Mickey Mouse Highway. Then there was a concept art. A group of stuffed shirts from Disney Co. actually held a city meeting. They attempted to sell everyone in a low lucrative this project was going to be for everyone. And it showed the concept art, the gigantic Indian place surrounded by jungle, staffed with men and women in lion clothes and tribal gear. Well, suffice to say everyone flipped their crap. We're talking about a large Indian palace, jungle, and lion cloths not only in the center of relatively wealth area, but also a somewhat exotic, sorry guys, I don't remember how to pronounce that, area of the southern USA. It was questionable mix at the point in history. One member of the crowd tried to storm the stage, but he was quickly subdued by security after he managed to break one of the presentation boards over his knee. Disney took the community and essentially broke it over its knees. As well, houses were raised, the land was cleared, and there was a damn thing anyone could do or say about it. Local TV and newspapers were against the resort at the beginning, but some insane connection between Disney media holding and the local venues came into play and their opinions turned into dime. So anyways, Treasure Island, the Bahamas. Disney sunk those millions in and then split. The same thing happened with Mowgli's Palace. Construction was complete. Visitors actually stayed at the resort. The surrounding communities were flooded, traffic, and the usual annoyances associated with the influx of lost and irate tourists. Then it all just stopped. Disney shut it down, and nobody knew what the heck to think. But they were pretty happy about it. Disney's loss was pretty hilarious and wonderful to a large group of folks who didn't want this in the first place. I honestly didn't give the palace and to give the place another thought since hearing it close in the cave though. I lived maybe 4 hours from Emerald Island, so really I only heard the rumblings and didn't experience any of it at first. Then I read this article from someone who explored the Treasure Island resort and posted a whole blog about all this crazy crap he found there. Stuff just left behind. Things smashed, defaced, probably ruined by disgruntled former employees who lost their jobs. Wow, the locals from around probably had a hand in wrecking that place. People there felt just angry about Treasure Island as folks here did about Margot's Palace. Plus there's rumors that Disney had released the aquarium stock into the local waters when they closed, including sharks. Who wouldn't want to take a few swings at some merchandise after that? Well, what am I getting at is this blog about Treasure Island that got me thinking. Even though many years had passed since closing, I figured it might be cool to do some urban exploration at Marvelous Palace. Take some photos about that experience and probably see if there was anything I could take home in memento. I'm not going to say I wasted no time in getting there, because honestly it took me another year after I first found the Treasure Island article to get around going to the Emerald Island. Over the course of that year, I did not do a lot of research on the Palace Resort, or rather, I tried to. Naturally, no official Disney site or research made any mention of this place. That had been scrubbed clean. Even odder, however, was that nobody before myself had apparently thought to blog about the place or even post a photo. None of the local TV or newspaper sites had one thing about the place, though that was expected since they all had swung Disney's way. They wouldn't be out there lauding their embarrassment, you know. Recently, the corporations can actually ask Google, for example, to remove links from search results. Basically for no good reason. Looking back, it probably not the nobody spoke of the resort, but rather their words were no accessible. So in the end, I could barely find the place. All I had to go on was the old map I received in the mail back in the 90s. With promotional items sent out people who had recently been to Disney World. And I guess since it had been there is in the late 80s, that was recent. I didn't really intend to hang on to it. It just got shoved in my books and comics from my childhood. I'd only remembered it months into my research. And even then, it took me another few weeks to locate the storage bin my parents had showed me and had shoved it into. But I did find it. Locals were no help, and as most people were transplants who had moved into the beach in recent years, or old residents who just sneered at me and made rude gestures the second I managed to say, "Where could I find Mugglies?" And that was it. The drive took me through a northeast long corridor of overgrowth, tropical plants that run rampant and overpopulated area mixed, and native species of flora that actually belonged there had tried to reclaim the land. I was in awe when I reached the front gates of the resort. Tremendous, monolithic, wooden gates whose supports to either side looked like they must have been cut from giant cicadas. The gate itself had been gouged in several places by woodpeckers and eaten away in the base of burrowing insects. Hanging on the gate was a sheet of metal, some random scrap, which had hand-painted letters scrawled in black, "Abandoned by Disney." The handwork of some past local or employee who wanted to make some small protest. The gates were open enough to walk through, but not drive. I grabbed my digital camera and the map, whose flip side, sorry guys, I just lost my place, So to show the layout of the resort, I set on the roof. I set off on foot. Sorry guys, I'm messing up a little bit. And here's a picture. The inner grounds of the place were just as overgrown as the entryway. Palm trees stood and tended and ragged among piles of their accounts. Banana plants smoothly stood in their own sinking. Bug-riddled refuse. There was this sort of clash between order and chaos as carefully planted rows of perennial flowers mixed with obnoxious tall weeds and stinking blackness mushrooms. All that remained of any outdoor structures were broken, rotten wood and various sheared bits of unidentifiable material was not most likely an information booth or an outdoor bar was now simply a pile of assorted debris, chopped up by past vandalism and revenged by weather. The most interesting thing of the grounds was a statue of Blue and Friendly Bear from the Jungle Book, which stood in a sort of courtyard in front of the main building. He was forcing a jovial wave toward no one, staring into empty space with a silly, toothy grin as a bird crap covered whole swath of his fur and vines ensnared his platform. I approached the main building, the palace, only to find at the outside of the building covered in graffiti where the original paint had been peeled and chipped away. The front doors weren't just open, they had been taken off the hinges and they were stolen. Above the doors, for the gaping maw where they had been, someone had once again painted "Abandoned by Disney." I wish I could tell you about all the awesome stuff I saw inside the palace. Forgotten statues, abandoned cash registers, the full-fledged secret society of homeless bums. But no. The inside of the building was no Stark. So there, I actually think people had stolen the molding of the walls. Anything that was too big to steal. Counters, desks, giant fig trees, they were all resting in the empty echo chamber that amplified my every step like a slow rat-a-tat of a machine gun. I checked the floor plan and headed to all the locations that might seem in any way interesting. The kitchen was, as you imagine, the industrial food prep area with all the appliances in space. No expenses spared. Every glass surface was broken. Every door knocked off its hinges. Every metal surface kicked and dented. The entire place smelled like very old piss. The huge freezer, not even remotely cool now, had now upon row of empty shelf space. Hooks hung from the ceiling and probably for hanging cuts of meat. And as I stood inside the moment, I noticed they were swinging. Each hook swung in a random direction, but their movements were so slow and small, it was almost impossible to see. I figured it had been caused by my footsteps, so I stopped one for my swinging, clutching it in my fist, then carefully letting go. But within seconds, it started to swing once more. The bathrooms were in much the same state as the rest of the place, just like the Treasure Island Resort. For one hand, the house likely smashed each clean commode with coconuts and any other implements. There was about a half-inch of rancid, stinking stingent water on the floor, so I didn't stay there for very long. I thought it was the toilets and the sinks. But the bed to the ladies' room. Yes, I went there. All dripped, leaked, or just ran freely. It seemed to me that they should have shut the water off long ago. There were plenty of rooms in the resort, but naturally, I didn't have time to look through all of them all. So few I did peer into the similarity vect and didn't expect to find anything there. I thought there was actually a television or a radio in one room, as I really think I heard a quiet conversation coming out. Well, it was like a whisper, probably my own breathing echoing in the silence, which is another case of the song flowing water playing tricks on my mind, but this is what it sounded like. I didn't believe it. Pure unknown reply. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Your father told you. Unknown reply, or possibly just creeping. I know, this sounds ridiculous. I'm just telling you what I experienced. Why, I thought there might have been something running in that room, or worse, some vagrant would hold up there probably would have knifed me. At the front doors in the palace again, I figured I hadn't found anything of note and had wasted the trip up. As I looked out the door, I noticed something interesting in the courtyard that I had purely missed. Something that would give me at least one thing to show for all my trouble, even if it was just a photograph. There was a lifelike statue of a python, maybe 80 feet long, coiled up and sunning itself pedestal right in the center of the area. It's almost time for the sun to start setting, so the light fell onto the object in a perfect way for a photograph. I approached the python and snapped a photo. Then I stood on my toes and snapped another. I moved closer again to get the detail of face. Slowly, casually, the python lifted its head, looked differently into my eyes, turned and slithered into the pedestal, across the grass, and into the trees. All 80 feet of it. It had long disappeared into the woods before its tails even left the sunning spot. Disney had released all their exotic animals into the grounds, right there. My floor plan map was the reptile house. I should have known. I read about the sharks at Treasure Isle. And I should have known they'd done this. I was dumbfounded, just utterly stupefied. My mouth must have been hanging open for the longest time before I came back down to earth and snapped it shut. I blinked a few times and backed away from where the snake had been, back toward the palace. Even though it was totally gone, I still wasn't taking any chances back my way into the building. I took a few deep breaths and slapped my own face to get myself right in the head again after that. I looked for a place to sit down, as my legs feeling a bit like jelly at this point, of course. There was no place to sit down unless I wanted to recline a broken glass of dead leaf carpet, haul myself off onto a desk of questionably reliability. I'm sorry guys, I can't talk today. I had seen some stairs near the palace lobby and decided to go have a seat there until I felt better. The staircase was far enough away from the front of the building to relatively clean. Save for startling accumulation of dust, I pulled a wedge in the middle of the wall. Once again painted with the Abandoned by Disney motto, I became accustomed to. I placed the wedge on the stairs and sat to keep at least somewhat clean. The stairway led downward, below ground level, using my camera flash as some sort of improvised flashlight. I could see that the staircase ended in a metal mesh door with a padlock. A sign on the door, a real sign, read, "Mascots only, thank you." This perked up my spirits a little bit for two reasons. One, a mascots only area where they definitely had some interesting stuff back in the day. Two, the padlock was still in place. Nobody had gone down there. Not the vendors, not the looters, nobody. This was the place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph or randomly steal. I had come to the palace incessantly agreeing with myself that it was okay to take anything I wanted because, hey, abandoned. It didn't take much to bust the lock. Well, actually, that's wrong. It didn't take much to bust in the metal plate on the wall the padlock was hooked onto. Tana and Kay had done most of the work for me. I was able to bend the metal plate enough to pull the screws out of the wall, something nobody else had apparently thought of, or hadn't been able to do at the time. Mascot's only area started very welcome change from the rest of the building I'd seen. For one, every second of third fluorescent light overhead was illuminated, even though they flickered and faded randomly. Also, nothing had been stolen or broken, even if age exposure was definitely taken their toll. Tables had pads and pens, there were clocks, and the punching clock in the wall complete with filled out time cards. Chairs were scattered around. There was even a small break room with an old static-filled television, and long-rotted out food and drink on the counters. It was like one of those post-apocalypse movies where everything is left in a state of evacuation. As I walked into the maze like sub-basement hallways of mascots only, the sights just became more and more interesting. As I went further, the desks and tables were knocked over, papers scattered, almost muddled with damp floor, and the large carpet mold was slowly overtaking the real noticing crimson floor covering. Everything was just sort of squishy. Anything would disintegrated into mush that would I applied even the least amount of force. Clothes and items hang on hooks, and the rooms simply fell in moist threads. I tried to unhook them. One thing that annoyed me was the light of becoming more sparse and unreliable as I went further into the dank, suffocating depths of this place. Eventually I reached the black and yellow striped door with the cheats word Character Prep 1 stenciled on it. The door wouldn't open at first. I had figured this was probably where the costumes were kept, and definitely wanted the photograph of that twisted, stinking mess. Try as I might, whatever angle, sick trick I tried, the door wouldn't budge. That is, until I gave up and started to walk away. That was when there was a slight popping sound at the door creaked open slowly. Inside the room was completely dark, pitch black. I used the camera flash to look the camera switch, and the wall, the door, but there was nothing. As I made my search, I jarred out the sense of excitement. A loud electrical buzz rose of light overhead suddenly flashed the light. Looking that faded in, and almost like I had passed. It took a second for my eyes to adjust, and seemed like it was going to keep brighter until all the bulbs exploded. But just when I thought I could reach the critical stage, the lights dimmed a bit and steadied. The room was exactly as I pictured it. Various Disney costumes hung up on the wall, fully put together like strange cartoon characters hung from invisible noses. There's an entire rack of loincloth and native clothes on hangers toward the back. What I found odd, and what I wanted to photograph right away, was a Mickey Mouse costume. The center of the room, unlike the other costumes, it was laying on its back. In the center of the floor was like a murder victim. The fur on the costume was rotten and shedding, creating bare patches. What was even odder, however, was that the coloring of this costume was photo negative and actual Mickey Mouse. Black where it should be white, and white where it should be black. Normally, red overalls were light blue. Decided to put in enough that I actually put a photographing that thing until last. I took a picture of the costume hanging on the walls, upward angles, downward angles, side shots to show an entire row of frozen, putrid cartoon faces, some with plastic eyes missing. Then I decided to stage a shot. Just a shot. Just one of the bedraggled character heads in the slick, greeny floor. I reached the headpieces of Donald Duck costume and carefully removed it so the thing wouldn't fall apart in my hands. As I looked into the face of a wide-eyed and modern head, a loud clattering sound made me jump with fright. I looked down at my feet, and between my shoes was a human skull. It had fallen out of the mascot head, shattered into pieces at my feet. Only the empty face and the lower jaw remained, staring at me. I dropped the duck head immediately, as you'd expect, and moved for the door. As I stood in the doorway, I looked back at the skull on the floor. I had to take a picture of it, I had to. For any number of reasons that may seem silly, but you don't think it through. I need proof of what happened, especially if Disney was going to somehow make this go away. I had no doubt in my mind, right from the start, that even it was gross neglect, Disney was responsible for this. Then, that's when Mickey, the photo negative, Opposite Mickey in the middle of the floor started to get up. First sitting, ended up climbing. To its feet, the Mickey Mouse costume, or whoever was inside of it, stood there in the center of the room. Its fake face was staring directly at me. I mumbled, "No," over and over and over. With a shaken hand, violently thrusting apart my legs that had once again turned to jelly, I managed to lift the camera and aim at the opposite creature, now quietly sizing me up. The digital camera screen displayed only dead pixels in the shape of the plane. It was perfect silhouette of the Mickey Mouse costume. As the character, as the camera moved in my unsteady hand, the dead pixels spread, mirroring the screen whatever Mickey's outline moved to. Then the camera died, then blank and quiet broken. I raised my eyes once again to the Mickey Mouse costume. "Hey!" it said in a hushed, perverted, but perfectly executed Mickey Mouse voice. "Want to see my head come off?" It started to pull off its own head, working clumsy, glove-clad fingers around its neck and clawing. Impatient movements similar to the wounded man trying to pull himself free to the predator's jaws. As it worked its digits into the neck, so much blood, so much thick, chunky, yellow blood. I I turned away as I heard a sickening tearing of cloth and flesh. Only cared about getting away. Above the doorway of the room, I saw the final message clawed into the metal with bone or fingernails. Abandoned by God. I never got the pictures out of the camera. I never wrote the blog entry about it. After I ran from that place, fled for my sanity, it's not my very life. I knew why Disney didn't want anyone to know about this place. They didn't want anyone like me getting in. They didn't want anything like that getting out. There you go. That was the Abandoned by Disney Creepypasta. I really hope you guys enjoyed. And I just figured I'd do it because it was pretty good. I had read this one before. I know a couple of you people in the live stream had requested it, so I decided to do it for you guys. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye, my beautiful people. Bye-bye. Oh yeah, by the way, new intro. Outro me.